Welcome back to another special edition of the Knight Report podcast. I'm your host, Mike Broadbent. Joining me once again is special guest and friend of the show, David Anderson. He's going to come on to discuss part 2 of our potential Rutgers portal target series. This time we're going to talk about the offensive targets. David, thanks once again for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me, Mike.
One thing you'll notice as we go through this, we don't have any quarterback or running back targets on this list. We had players at every position, rather, last week for the defensive side of the ball. I just kind of want to address why we don't have any of those positions on this list. For me, who created the list, quarterback, I just think it's pretty clear the staff is going to play AJ Serace next year. 3 years in the system. They love him for everything we've heard. And ideally, you get like a mentor type behind the scenes guy to come in and be behind him. I know everybody wanted that guy, Jack Tuttle, a few years ago, the guy who transferred from Indiana. He ended up at Michigan. He ended up having to start games because of injuries. But that's like the idea is like, if you can get a guy who's a redshirt senior, who is undersized, has really no NFL prospects, but wants to get into coaching, maybe you can convince him to like join the roster as like basically a GA. But there's going to be tons of players out there, or tons of teams out there who want that too. So I just think Rutgers kind of isn't in that kind of market. Do you kind of agree with the assessment there, quarterback wise?
Yeah, I mean, there's an outside shot that in the future, a guy might see the infrastructure around him at Rutgers and think that they're a quarterback away, but this doesn't seem like one of those years for the Scarlet Knights. I mean, the Jack Tuttle thing made sense. Even when Illinois got Art Sitkowski from Rutgers, it was kind of the same situation, but in reverse. I mean, that's probably where they are. I do have concerns going into next season with, presumably AJ Serace might get a series or two in these next couple weeks. Hopefully not more, because it probably means something went horribly wrong. But you're going to go into a season with, a handful of series ever between your starter, your backup, theoretically Sean Aschenfelder, and a true freshman coming in I think it's Xavier Stern, right? Like that is possibly a recipe for disaster. But I mean, I'm just not sure in the grand scheme of the economics that Rutgers has to work with that what type of investment they would want to make. Because, of course, everybody has their price, and we'll kind of get to that on this list.
Yeah, and just like watching some programs kind of melt down this year, like Wisconsin, for example, like they were on their 3rd or 4th string quarterback. Can you imagine if we would have had to play Shane Aschenfelder this year? Not that he can't be a good player. Sean, I'm sorry. Yeah. Sean Aschenfelder this year. Like, I'm not saying he can't be a good player down the road, but clearly he is nowhere near ready to play. Like, how disastrous this would be, like, 2018 Ash level offense bad and looks that bad, rather. Geez, I can't even talk this morning. Right. It would look that bad, in my opinion.
I do think they could throw for more than one passing yard, but that's just me. That was 2019.
Probably. That was 2019, yeah. I forgot to mention before we get too deep into this, this podcast is presented to you by FanDuel. If you want to be a sicko and get in on the betting action this upcoming weekend for the Scarlet Knights, Rutgers they opened as a 31.5 point underdog. They are currently at a 32.5 point underdog, 56 point over under in Columbus against the number 1 ranked Ohio State Buckeyes. I would not touch that with a 10-foot pole, but that's just me. Let's talk running backs. I don't have any running backs on this list either. I think there's an outside shot. CJ Campbell comes back next year, but even if he doesn't, good luck trying to sell a guy who needs to play right away that you're going to get any meaningful snaps behind Antoine Raymond, who is the staff is going to put every effort behind keeping him for the upcoming season. That's the primary reason. You agree with that kind of take, David?
Yeah, I mean, I think that this staff has been able to identify and develop running backs to the level that it's not somewhere where I would want to spend my money unless the guy was bringing another dimension like CJ Campbell did this year. Like we talk about his first step quickness being something that, I mean, Ja'Shawn Benjamin's quick, but he didn't have that like take the handoff, run straight ahead before the defense can react type. So I was very happy when they got CJ Campbell, but I would consider that not an every year type thing that you're going to be able to identify a guy like that. The one thing they do
Yep.
have going for them is, yeah, even if Antoine Raymond's a somewhat bell cow, they run the ball enough that there are other carries, even though I would imagine Benjamin, who knows what we're going to get if Sam Brown's back, who knows what we're going to get CJ Campbell, obviously Mitchell, the true freshman, and then Dukes, who's committed. Like, a lot of those guys could be good, and I don't know if necessarily. I think you want to reward your guys for being in the program and learning and developing, unless you absolutely can't miss a guy. And I feel like Campbell kind of was above that line. So if you can find a guy like that, sure, but it's not. It's not nearly a priority compared to some of these other things. And to your point, it's going to be a hard sell for a guy who just wants 30 carries a game. Like, they're not getting that.
Yep. And in the spring, when we had our one shot to talk to Demir Shaw, and this is kind of backed up by what we were hearing, he said that CJ Campbell was the only guy that they went after in the portal, and I believe
Right.
it because they, didn't put a ton of emphasis in it. I mean, I follow who they follow, and they did not put a ton of effort into like contacting running backs from what it seemed on the outside. Um, Anything about quarterback or running back before we hop into some offensive linemen?
Well, we'll talk about this when we talk about receiver, but some teams like to use running backs as kind of like that speed type, gadget type, versatile guy. Rutgers doesn't really do that much.
Yep.
So, maybe under another offense coordinator, another scheme, or another time, things might be different. But, even during the Ash era, when they might use like Raheem Blackshear or even Aaron Young kind of more as that kind of guy, they don't really do that in their scheme right now.
Yep. All right, let's get into some offensive linemen. We're going to start with tackle. David, what should Rutgers be looking for if they decide to go after a tackle? Because I do think it is up in the air that they go after any offensive lineman this year because we don't know who's coming back. We don't know what the injury status of players is going to be. But if they were to go after a tackle, what should we be looking for in terms of traits, in terms of kind of archetypes? What do you think?
I think we're looking for somebody who can pass block because we feel pretty confident they have guys who can run block. What makes this kind of interesting is the body type. Like, Rutgers has had success with those bigger linemen, like you see like a Mo Giwa. What makes someone like Nick Del Grande, who's the first guy on your list, kind of interesting is he's not particularly tall. And so I think the production is really there at a lower level, but he kind of plays almost like a lineman from the 80s. He doesn't have long arms, not only that, but he doesn't kind of put his arms on the outside. He tries to punch in the middle, set his feet, anchor down, and punch a lot to keep guys off balance. He has really good feet. He's really good at pulling. Uh, in space, he gets into space well, but a lot of times he's almost afraid to get called for holding, and he doesn't always finish plays. And so I know Rutgers staff cares a lot about finishing blocks, and I think he does so like close to the line. But he's kind of an oddball in that he doesn't have the traditional athletic traits that you would see in a tackle. Converse, that he's kind of the opposite of like a Ryder Langsdale, who was at a lower position, had production similarly, but he has that tall, like wide shoulders, kind of smaller lower half frame that you see a lot of times from offensive tackles at the power four level. So, Nick Del Grande, to answer your question, is actually maybe not the prototypical thing they would be looking at a tackle. I think there's a scenario where he could be a tackle in a P4 team if he maybe has a little help from a good guard next to him, and probably if you keep a wide tight end in to do that, to kind of help him if there's kind of taller edge rushers that need to get chipped. But I think the archetype is more just you're looking for people who can pass block, because I think Rutgers has a lot of guys in the ranks who are, run blockers and could play guard.
Yeah, and plus, like we were talking about this through text last night, like tackles have to have a much higher prerequisite level of athleticism in order to defend what has become an increasingly more athletic position in terms of edge rushers. And if you aren't athletic, say you're a 240-pound tackle in high school, you have that athleticism on tape, But when you add 60 pounds, you've taken a half step slower, and you can't really get to the outside and kick step the way you used to. You can shift down to guard and be fine. Whereas a guard kind of, it's like the last station before the end of the tracks. Like there's nowhere really for you to go if you don't have that athleticism to play guard. And if you can't, if like in terms of developing guards, like you could always take those tackle prospects, and we've seen that from Shiano and crew over the years, where you don't have it guard tackle, you kick down to guard, and if you can't kick it at guard, you're out of the program. Is that kind of the way you view it as well?
Well, yes and no. I mean, I think there are certain traits that you want in your guards, but it's, to your point, harder to find tackles because you're on an island and you have to be better at, like you were saying, like a kick step or a kick slide, because there's just more space that you have to move side to side. But that's why I'm saying someone like a Nick Del Grand, he's probably a better tackle than a guard, even though he's not tall. I would probably say, and we can show the clip for Ben Morawski, kind of what we're talking about here. He's kind of got a better top half to potentially be a guard, even though he's taller. So if you want to show that.
Yep. And while this
I
is
think,
load.
Yeah, so he plays left tackle. There's the frame on him right there. So you can see he's kind of a tall guy, but already in his stance, he's in the 2-point stance right there. And he does a nice job at first just identifying he doesn't have to block somebody and helping, but he doesn't have like the elite lower half side to side lateral agility. But you saw right there, he can pull. And right here when he's moving out to the left side, like he can generate momentum and then kind of like just use his leverage on his top half to block people. All right, here's him. This is against Syracuse again.
He doesn't have a really great foot speed either, though.
Right, his foot speed's not great. Really what he's trying to do is like almost line a guy up and then come crashing down on them. I know that's not really a technical term per se. But what you also saw in a couple of these clips, similar to when Rutgers had Willie Tyler, there's at times where the opponent doesn't even line anyone up on him, or they go so wide in that Jason Babin wide 9 situation that they're just going to try to run around him. But it opens you up for plays like that, like we just saw, where then a tight end can then block the guy and then you can get out into space. So it's kind of an interesting thing, but I would just worry that if you don't have a tight end helping, there's going to be edge rushers that don't have to go as far out to be able to be effective against him. But he is strong, and, there's a chance a guy like him, even though he's tall, could slide into a guard spot.
Yeah, and that's what this is referenced in this tweet as well, where it might not – I mean, some of these guys, it behooves them to get some more versatility on tape, especially if the NFL evaluators see this as well and are like, this kid can't play tackle in the league, but maybe he could play guard. If he puts some elite guard tape against Power 4 competition up, that could certainly help buoy his stock.
Right, which would be a selling point, even though, and again, I think we're going to harp on this a lot, especially in the offense, I'm not 100% convinced that he would be a better guard than people that are already in the program.
Makes sense. I do want to give some high-level bio data for the players we just referenced before we get too deep into this. Nick Del Grand, he's a redshirt junior tackle out of Coastal Carolina. And this is mainly for the audio listeners who can't see what's on the screen. Del Grand is a 6'4", 302-pound tackle, and you'd have 1 year of eligibility left after the season. He's from Lancaster, PA. He attended Lampeter Strasburg High School. He's started 3 years at left tackle for Coastal Carolina. He's got a lot of experience playing. He's got a PFF grade of 78.2, which is 22nd among tackles, and he has an elite level pass blocking grade at 87.6. And Ben Morawski, he's a redshirt junior offensive tackle from UConn. He's listed at 6'7", 335. He'd have 1 year of eligibility left. He's from Harleysville, Pennsylvania. He attended St. Thomas More High School. He started at left guard in 2024, so he actually does have guard tape before he moved to left tackle this season. So he's a 2 year starter for the Huskies. PFF grade of 75.8, which is 32nd among tackles. He's got a really good run blocking grade of 86.3, and his pass blocking grade, like we said, isn't great, 54.5, so it might make sense for him to move inside. Might be playing at tackle out of necessity for the Huskies. Next up, we have Noah Jordan. He's a redshirt junior from Columbia, listed at 6'5", 320, to have 1 year of eligibility left after this year. He's from Leonardtown, Maryland. He went to St. Mary's Riken High School. He's a 2-year starter at right tackle for Columbia. He's got a PFF grade of 75.2, and he's got a pretty balanced pass blocking grade and run blocking grade, 68.6 and 74.9. We don't have any clips on him, but you've seen a ton of this kid. What do you think of Noah Jordan from Columbia?
He's kind of an interesting prospect and a little bit difficult to talk about because for the Ivy League level, at his size, almost every defensive end that he's trying to block has to take the approach of just trying to speed rush around the outside. And so it's when you watch the games, it's like almost every time they're doing that, which leads to very similar plays each time, which are either he shoves the guy all the way outside, or the quarterback steps up in the pocket, or they run a draw play through that vacated space. Like very few guys in the Ivy League level are going to be able to sit down in that run gap and not get pushed out by him. I think he does a little bit better job in the run game of, despite being 6'5", getting lower in his stance, maintaining good leverage. But from a pass blocking standpoint, I have some similar concerns that Big Ten guys won't have to only speed rush him. If he's actually facing guys who can deliver a quicker punch or be quicker off the ball, that I'm not sure what that's going to look like. And that's why one of the disadvantages of this compared to high school recruiting is in high school recruiting, you're going to see all these kids in the camp setting. And in the camp setting, you can see how they perform against, similar levels of competition. Whereas like Columbia doesn't play, a Power 4 team like some of these other guys do to actually try to compare like for like. Like even Shedrick Rhodes, when Rutgers was bringing him in, we had some tape of him against like Iowa State, and you could kind of see how he performed in those moments. Jordan doesn't really have that. So, yeah, there's a chance that he would be fine, but there's also a chance that he wouldn't be really even in the 2 deep from what I can tell.
No, that's a good point. And the Ivy League also has a shorter season. I think they don't kick off until like September 20th normally. I think they have an 8 or 9 game season, whereas a lot
they
of
basically start week 3 and it's 10 games. And then this is the first year that Ivy League teams are going to be able to go to the playoffs.
Yep. So this next player is one that I gave David this list that I made, and I said there's one kid that I'm really kind of intrigued by out of the offensive linemen, and it's Jacoby Hills, who's a redshirt freshman. He's the starting left tackle at Temple. He's listed at 6'5", 290. He'd have 3 years of eligibility left after the season. He's from Morristown High School, and he's from Morristown, New Jersey. He went to Morristown High School. He wasn't expected to start this year, but an injury in camp forced him into a starting role. And he's really kind of performed better than anyone could have expected. PFF grade of 74.4, which is 38th amongst tackles. Solid run defense grade of run blocking grade of 75.2. Pass blocking grade is a 62.7. But I'm going to pop his film on because I was a bit blown away by him. David, what was your kind of impression of Jacoby Hills?
Yeah, I mean, similar to what you're saying, I don't know how big you can make that, but he just has very quick feet for a guy of his size. Like he's pretty nimble. And so sometimes in run plays like the one you're showing, he can bend at his waist rather than, getting low in his stance. But since he's a pretty young guy compared to some of the other ones on this list, I think that's quite good. Like in this particular play right there that we were showing, he didn't have to necessarily anchor. He was kind of on the move. But in pass pro, I think this is a pass play right here. And he has to get outside. Let's see this one. All right, it's taking a second to load. But he just is a very smooth, fluid athlete, especially in his lower half. So again, there's another run play. He's number 71 in red. And you can just see how he moves around pretty well, compared to some of the other guys. some of the things like his hand placement and just his initial punch, I think he can learn a lot more from that in first meaningful action. You know, like like right here's a good one though. He initiated the contact. He was low in his stance. He kept his feet moving, and I really like this. This is the best clip right here. You know, he delivers a blow to the shoulder, and then he's able to reset and then hit the guy again. So there's, now I'm forgetting the technical term for it off the top of my head, but basically when you're re-engaging the defensive end over and over again, but not off balance, like that you are maintaining your leverage, you're maintaining your balance, and I think that he's really good at that. So I'm actually would think that maybe if we looked at his games, he'd be improving over the course of the season with his pass blocking grades. Because to me, he looks more of a pass blocker at this point than a run blocker. Maybe it's just his level of competition.
Yeah, I want you to, at home, who's watching this on YouTube, watch how quick his feet are compared to Ben Moraski. The last tackle you saw is. He's just like so nimble on his feet that I think his upside, he's only going to get better. Whereas Moraski might have already hit his ceiling.
Yeah. I mean, I think that if you were to ask me which guy on this list has the best chance of being a power 4 tackle and being, you know, an above average starter, it would definitely be him.
Some more clips here. Some of them might be repeated, but
yeah, that's the one where he got to the second level. He chipped to help his left guard, even though the guy was lined up head up on him, right? So if he had, or that one, he kind of made a reach block. So a reach block is when someone actually has inside position on you and you have to move your feet faster with a quick burst at the line to be able to get in front of them, or else the play can't be made, right? So the reach block is the most challenging of the blocks that you have to try to do because you have to explode off the ball, and a bigger guy who's not quick isn't going to be able to get to that defender that they have to block.
And we've seen a ton of that against Rutgers' defensive line this year, where you've seen guys like our edges just kind of get, totally blown off the ball, where they're just getting pushed around. So it's a good sign that he's shown that at least the group of 5 level for a tackle.
Yeah, I mean, obviously this guy he's blocking for Army isn't like the guys we're going to see this upcoming week on Ohio State. But, no. I mean, just look at the size of that guy he's blocking. He might be 230, 250 at most.
So Jacoby Hills, if he does enter the portal, I do think that he's going to have a ton of interest, which shouldn't surprise given his age, given what he's been able to produce, given that he's a starter this young on a good Temple team. So hopefully if he does enter, Rutgers shows him some interest because I think he could be a starter down the line for the Scarlet Knights. Drew Terrell is the last tackle we have on the list. He's a redshirt junior out of Miami of Ohio. And after talking to you about this, it might not be a guy that Rutgers wants to go after, but he's on the list here. He's listed at 6'6", 289, so a little light for a power 4 tackle. He's got 1 year of eligibility left after the season. He's from Lebanon, Indiana, went to Lebanon High School. He's been a 1-year starter at tackle, right tackle for Miami of Ohio. Got a PFF grade of 75.8 and pass blocking grade of 72.1 and run blocking grade of 73.8. From what you saw to Drew Terrell, this might not be a match made in heaven.
Well, yeah, I mean, he reminds me a little bit of Morawski, but he's not as heavy, like you said. I think his agility is a little better, but the game I watched of him was the Rutgers game. So I was rewatching that last night. And let's just say he got blown up by Jordan Thompson on a straight-up bull rush. He had Jordan Walker just kind of push him aside at one point like he wasn't even there. And then there was another play where Eric O'Neill made a really, really nice rip move, like right underneath him. Like he tried to get his hands on Eric O'Neill, and O'Neill kind of just got his left hand Eric O'Neill was playing on the left end. And he got his left hand extended and pulled his right on like a rip move right in his armpit and got right under him. And so I think, if I was to compare him on the list to someone like Morawski, who we already said we don't necessarily think he can be tackle, I think Morawski has a little bit more power in his upper body to be able to kind of push him down, whereas Terrell, again, he struggled with 3 different guys on Rutgers, and we know that none of them have put up elite sack numbers this year, especially Jordan Thompson, who's really in there for his
Yep.
run defense. So that really concerned me. Now, again, it's one game, but we have seen how Rutgers defensive ends haven't necessarily had the greatest pressure, but he was really, really having a hard time blocking them. And so I didn't really watch a lot of his other games other than a highlight here and there, but I really think he's going to struggle at the power four level. I think your Rutgers has guys in the program like Josh Blackson or something who, even though he's a freshman now, I feel like there's a higher likelihood that he's going to be able to possess the ability to anchor in his stance and maintain leverage and better than Terrell, who he's kind of tall and doesn't have a lot of weight, so he can't just kind of sit down in his lower half and maintain that pad level.
That's a good point, and I thought about not even discussing them, but I want to honor the list that I put together, even if they're not likely good fits after some evaluation. We got guards next. Those are the tackles that I have on my list. I do think that of all the position groups that we actually have players listed for, I think this is the least likely that we actually take somebody for a few reasons. One is, I mean, we have Kobe Asamoah coming back. Brian Felter is the lone graduate at the guard slot. And I think there's a lot of guys in the system that they probably would like over, an above average G5 or FCS guard. If Rutgers did take a guard, what's the kind of like player they should be looking for?
I think you're just kind of looking for a guy who's strong and raw, that maybe with some coaching from Pat Flaherty and the weight program at Rutgers, that you might be able to get a little something more out of that player. But I mean, when I look at next year, you have Kobe back. You should have Taj White and Dante Chin, who in an ideal world you're playing at guard. We've heard good things about Nick Oliveira. And then we've got more guys who are younger players on that list of, that I personally like better than most of the guards that I've seen at the group of five level. I mean, the two guards that you have on the list were both from Monmouth, which makes
Yep.
sense because if you're going to get somebody, maybe they got a girlfriend or who is still going to Monmouth and they're close by. Like, you never know how some of those things work. I mean, Hubbard's from Hackensack, I would say, and Moreno, I think, is from Don Bosco, I think you said.
Yep.
Both of them are okay. The main game that I watched of theirs was the game against Charlotte because we were also evaluating guys from both teams across the board. I think I liked Hubbard a little bit more, even though for whatever reason he seemed to be getting more help on his blocks than Moreno did. I think Moreno really had a hard time in that game, and obviously Charlotte isn't necessarily even a good group of five team. So if you're going to try to be
Yeah.
blocking power four guys, I mean Moreno is I think 1 year younger, so maybe there's always a chance guys can get more, not even just strength, but like functional strength. Like I'm not sure
Yep.
what their numbers are in the weight room, but to be able to actually translate on the field, like there's a good chance there. But I mean I would say Hubbard probably just has a better chance of contributing, even though he's only got 1 year left. But again, I would not expect him to beat out the guys that are already on the roster for a spot in the two deep, unless Taj White's injured and or they're playing him at tackle and other guys are hurt, like Dante Chin can't come back. Some of the young guys don't develop properly. Like, sure, if he comes at a reasonable price and you're not really having to devote a lot of resources toward the recruiting or NIL money, I mean, I'm not going to not take these guys as starters, but I think that Rutgers has other guys on the team that are probably going to be more effective next year.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I'll just run through the two players right now. The first is Shalik Hubbard, like you mentioned. He's a redshirt junior guard out of Monmouth. He's listed at 6'4", 235, 325. I don't know what's going on
Yeah,
with me this
he's
morning.
big.
He'd have 1 year of eligibility left after the season. He's from Hackensack, and he went to Hackensack High School. He's a 2-year starter at right guard. He's been the anchor of Monmouth's offensive line. PFF grade of 79.2, which is 13th amongst guards. And he's got a good pass blocking grade at 79.6 and a good run blocking grade at 78.1. The other guard from Monmouth is Chris Moreno. He's a redshirt sophomore. He's listed at 6'1", 300, so he's definitely undersized for the power four level. He's from Newark, New Jersey, went to Don Bosco. He's a 2-year starter at left guard for Monmouth. He's got a PFF grade of 76.6, which is 20th amongst guards. He's got a strong pass blocking grade of 82.3 and a run blocking grade of 78.6. So, I mean, if Hubbard wanted to come in like a Justin Cesare and be, a break glass in case of emergency type player, I think he's probably going to get starting offers from the G5 level. So I don't think that's likely, but that's kind of the thought process there. Next up, we have tight end. This is where I'm starting to get excited because there's some really high level names on both the tight end and wide receiver list. Let's talk about what Rutgers should be looking for at the tight end position, because Rutgers has taken a transfer tight end in most of the last few seasons with varying levels of success. I think we kind of expected a little bit more out of the tight end position in terms of production. We seem to use our tight ends in very specific concepts. What should Rutgers be looking for in a tight end? And does that differ wholesale from what we've gotten in the portal the last couple of years?
Well, I think that they're looking for, like, one thing I like about Kirk Straka's offense is that if he has good receiving tight ends, he will use them. I think right now we're kind of in the same spot that he was at Minnesota in 2019, where there's just so much, talent at wide receiver that they have used their tight ends. Colin Weber and Kenny Fletcher mainly have gotten almost all the reps as more blockers, or in that very specific concept, like you're saying, where let's say Fletcher's going in motion and then maybe throw him a pass on the side, that RPO that absolutely devastated Virginia Tech last year. So I think they're looking for guys who can be productive, but they have to have at least some minimum pass catching as well as blocking skill. And so, yeah, I think there's a lot available. And I think there's a lot of guys who they could utilize in this Rutgers offense. So it's not necessarily something in particular, other than if they can't reliably, leak out and catch passes, then, we don't really just need a sixth offensive lineman. But beyond that, I mean, I think we don't really know what's going to look, the receiver room's going to look like next year in terms of, like, we hope that everyone can kind of step up a rung, but it's also possible that they need to throw their tight ends more, or if AJ Surace is under center, or I guess in the pistol, that he feels more comfortable throwing to tight ends than some previous Rutgers quarterbacks, because a lot of times quarterbacks don't have confidence to throw in traffic like that. And so that might have been another limitation that Rutgers quarterbacks have had. I mean, how many times did Gavin Wimsatt ever throw to a tight end over the middle? I can barely remember any.
I don't think he did. Although that was always his weakest point of the field. I don't, if you look at all his, PFF has like those throw charts. I think everything was basically sidelines, and maybe 10% of his throws overall were across the middle.
Yeah.
Let's start with this tight end list, though. This first name, I think we should all have our ears and eyes perked up for, because I think this one is very likely to be in the cards for the Scarlet Knights, I'll say. That's Chris Corbo. He's a redshirt junior tight end out of Dartmouth. He's listed at 6'5", 250 pounds. He'd have 1 year of eligibility left after the season. He's from North Caldwell, New Jersey, and he went to West Essex High School. He's been a very productive tight end over the last 3 years for Dartmouth. He's got 32 catches for 380 yards and 2 touchdowns through 8 games in 2025. His best season was last year when he had 7 touchdowns on 32 catches. He's got a very good PFF grade. I would say elite PFF grade for a tight end at 82.3, which is 6th amongst all tight ends. An excellent receiving grade of 84.0 and a strong pass blocking grade of 75.2. I've heard from people that this has been a name that's been on the radar kind of all season. I also have heard that he is a very good athlete, expected to run in the low 4.6s, vertical leap in the mid 30s. You've probably seen a few games of him or not live, but you've seen a few games of him just watching the Ivy League a lot. Tell us what your thoughts are on Chris Corbo.
He's got good hands. He's a pretty smart route runner. I don't know how extensive the route tree is, but he does a good job. shielding defenders and, just building space for himself. You'll see here, that corner route, which he's basically running like a wide receiver. But again, look at that DB who's guarding him. I don't think anyone in the Big Ten is going to be like that. So take that with
Is
a
that
grain of
Brown?
salt. Yeah, maybe. But again, you see how he extends his arms? He has a pretty good catch radius for his height.
That's Fordham.
I'm not sure. Like Colin Weber looked kind of massive when he was playing for
Yeah.
Charlotte,
Yep.
and now we see him with the Knights, and he's like, whereas like when they got Sean Bowman, he was just a monster. And so again, I think he also gets a lot of free releases off the line on some of these plays, which also I don't know if he's necessarily going to get as often, but he's a smooth receiver. To me, you'd have to use him as like a hybrid. Sometimes you hear it called like a U tight end, more of like an H back potentially, because I don't really see him as a Y like tight end in inline blocking on a down to down basis. Kind of like we've seen them use Kenny Fletcher, except I'm not sure if he's as strong as Fletcher is, but he's definitely a more experienced receiver with probably softer hands. But I think he could be an effective player in the Power Four as long as you're not asking him to just block defensive ends on a down in and down out basis.
Yeah, and that's fair. I think he'd probably be a receiving first tight end.
Yeah, like this play is really interesting right here because he has two defenders. He has to kind of reach over one of them and still make the play on an off script rollout, right? So this play kind of breaks down. And then I don't know why that guy fell. Maybe that was a subtle push. I'm not sure. The ref didn't call it, and he was right there. But he definitely is a smooth catcher. Good hands, good catch radius for his height. Again, if he's not 6'5", though, and he's only like 6'3", that might be problematic.
Yeah, then you'd have to kind of use him in almost like an H-back situation,
Like they
which
use with
wouldn't be.
Johnny Langan.
Yeah,
But Johnny
which we've
Langan
kind
is
of.
like really willing and tough blocker that Corbo would have to really like have that kind of football, toughness and desire to do that.
Um, let's keep it moving. This is another player who's very interesting. Peter Clark. He's a junior tight end from Temple. He's listed at 6'6", 265. He'd have 1 year of eligibility left after the season. He's from London, England. He's a part of the NFL Academy pipeline. He didn't really do a whole lot his first 2 seasons, but he kind of has become one of the go-to receivers in the Temple offense in 2025. This year so far, he's got 26 receptions for 434 yards and 4 touchdowns through 10 games. He's got a PFF grade of 90.6, which is number one of all tight ends nationally. He's got a receiving grade of 90.9. He's just like a super intriguing prospect because he is an international guy. He's put up such strong grades. He's got production behind him. What's your thoughts on Peter Clark?
I like him the most, I would say, of the tight ends, which is saying a lot because I do like all of them. And I'm not sure if like this play right here, he's not really guarded. He's coming out of a bunch formation, so it's more of like, lining up as a receiver. But he makes a nice catch kind of behind him and then turns it into a touchdown, if I'm remembering right, on this clip.
Yeah, he has to like fight the like final 2 yards.
But if you see initially, he was actually lined up behind another receiver. So in effect, he wasn't playing tight end in this play. He was playing receiver, right? He didn't engage anyone on the line. He had a free release, but then he did have to make an athletic move to secure the catch, turn, and then get in the end zone, right? Because the pass is kind of behind him, and he had to turn and then fight. Definitely an intriguing guy. I actually like him as a blocker too, if not more, because as a receiver, like I don't think he's gonna be, playing as a receiver in the Big Ten level kind of type thing. Whereas I feel like Kenny Fletcher, at times you probably could do it. They haven't done it because they have, DT and Duff and Strong. But I mean, I think Clark's frame as a blocker, it's not quite a Sean Bowman or Giovanni Haskins, who was practically a sixth offensive lineman. But I think he's got potential in the run and pass game And with some better coaching, especially as a blocker, from Coach Flaherty, that you're not getting necessarily a temple on the offensive line like right now comparatively, I think he could be really effective, even if he only has 1 year of eligibility. He's taken to the game quite quickly. And then the other thing that's kind of an oddity about this, by being an international player, like you mentioned, NFL teams have a slot for an international player. And so you might get a little extra, scouts or selling point to be like, hey, we can kind of just get some extra tape for your chances to go to the NFL out of that kind of scenario.
Yeah, it's interesting that it's the inverse in like the CFL where you're only allowed a certain amount of Americans on your team, whereas the
Right.
NFL almost like creates a space for just like an open roster spot for an international guy if you want to. I mean, everybody has that slot filled, but yeah, that's a good call out.
The last thing on Clark is like, I don't know how extensive his route tree is. I haven't seen him execute every type of block there is. You're kind of betting on potential with him.
Yep. Final tight end I have is Lakota Dipper, I think is how you pronounce it, or Dupre. He's listed at 6'4", 253. He'd have 2 years of eligibility left after the season. He's from Scott Township, PA, and he attended Lakeland High School. He also previously played at Charlotte for 2 years.
But he was a defensive end, really, there.
Yeah, so he switched over from defensive end mid-season last year. And despite the position change, he's actually had a pretty decent year. As his first year as a full-time tight end, 11 catches for 132 yards and 2 touchdowns through 10 games. And also, if you remember, if this name sounds familiar, Rutgers did try and land his brother out of the portal a year or two ago, who ended up at Alabama. He's got a PFF grade of 82.5, which is 5th amongst all tight ends, and a receiving grade of 78.4. Tell us what you think about Lakota Dupre.
It's kind of Kenny Fletcher-ish in that there's some plays that he makes, and you're just like, whoa. Like, that guy's an athlete. Like, that catch right there. Like, I think his catch radius and hands are probably better than Kenny Fletcher, though I'm not sure if he's, like, as fast as him. But you just see it, and you're like, wait, how was that guy playing defensive end last year? Like, it's kind of crazy. He also had, this might have been the clip where he was like, it was in the end zone right over the middle. Yep. So he runs a nice seam route in traffic, and he didn't necessarily high point the ball, but he didn't just wait for it to come to his body. He had to reach out and catch that before the contact came. And so I know that was kind of becoming a blowout, but that was a nice body awareness, field awareness about how to run that route through an open space. Right, because you can see he's got 3 defenders around him. And so I was pretty impressed by him, again, on the upside. I like him. I just don't know if he's as powerful as the one guy from Temple, the last one that we talked about, Clark. But I do think that this is the type of guy who, he ends up in the NFL in 3 years, and we're like, well, we sort of seen that coming.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. He's definitely flashed a lot of athleticism, a lot of raw ability that, as you can kind of tell from his journey to tight end, is still taking shape. So,
and he doesn't have a lot of catches. So that's the only other thing is like, is that does he have more in a different type of offense, or even then, like, he might not have to catch more than 11 passes for Rutgers and still be effective. Like, I don't know how many catches Weber and Fletcher have this year. But I just the threat of his going down that seam is something that defenses might have to account for.
Yeah, I'm looking it up right now to see how many catches Fletcher and Weber have. It can't be more than like 15 combined, right? So Fletcher's got 18 actually, and Weber's got 17. Okay, I was way off. 35 combined catches for about 300-ish yards and no touchdowns. So
yeah.
Final position we have is wide receiver. I think this is kind of an asterisk type situation because I think the program has a lot of really exciting young receivers in it. I think if you look at every single freshman receiver, you could point to a specific moment this season where they made a play that was wow worthy across, even if it's in the spring game or if it's in,
Sure, yeah.
garbage time. But there have been enough moments where I think the staff probably feels really good about the receiver room in general, even if you do lose both DT and Ian Strong. But
Right.
talk
And you get
about
Fama back from injury, theoretically, too.
Fama back from injury as well. But let's just say, I don't know, let's say Ian Strong doesn't come back. How does that, if does that change what we're looking for in your opinion in the portal? And if not, what should they be looking for in the portal generally for at receiver?
I think you're just basically looking for a guy who's going to be a complete beast, would be one. I know that's kind of a non-scientific way to say it, but, when we look at the first guy on your list, Jared Richardson, he is basically the strong. He's kind of like halfway between Ian Strong and Brandon Coleman, but at a lower level. He's obviously not
Yeah.
as tall as Coleman, was about 6'6". But if you could get Jared Richardson, you would probably just plug him into the Ian Strong role and just not miss many beats because he's a
Mm-hmm.
strong, powerful guy. So there's that. Obviously, you're probably not going to get a KJ Duff type. Or
No.
the other thing that I do think there's a chance, and we'll talk about John Derry in a second. I think it's John Derry or Josh Derry, I should say.
Yep.
I do think that when Rutgers had Christian Dremel 2 years ago, they really knew how to use him, and they haven't really been able to fill that type of role in their offense. Like we saw it last year where they were a little bit lost at that spot early in the year because they were trying to use Dymere Miller. And again, because he was a good slot receiver, but there's something about that elusive, like quick, unassuming guy that Kirk Shiraka can like do a lot with. And so it's possible that Rutgers might bring in one of the other two guys on this list who might fit more of that mold. But I mean, the 6'1", just pretty solid, like Shameen Jones type, I don't think they're necessarily going to be targeting a guy like that because you've got Ice Cup, you've in theory got Fama Toure coming back. Like you have a lot of other guys who can be, solid receivers in that role. It's really going to be only if a guy is either elite physically or he has those really quick feet and is a really, really good route runner and kind of sneaky that they have kind of struggled to develop. Those would be the two kind of archetypes I would see in this position.
Yeah, you've also got Michael Thomas, who had that crazy catch in the end zone from AJ Surace. You got Vernon Allen III. You got Jordan Houston. There's a lot of talent in this receiver room.
And again, you don't want to like just get another guy just for the sake of getting another guy. You want to reward guys for being in the program, trust your evaluators at the high school level in the first place.
Yeah, exactly. But the first guy on this list, I wouldn't say near and dear to your heart, but you should be extremely familiar with Jared Richardson. He's a player that like the Ivy League only has like one of these types per 4-year cycle. Like he is
Probably.
a guy who could easily be starting in the SEC right now. I wouldn't be surprised if he left and just went to the NFL after as a redshirt junior. He's listed at 6'2", 215 pounds. He'd have 1 year of eligibility left after this year. He's from Blakesley, Pennsylvania. He went to Bethlehem Catholic High School. He was a first team All-Ivy in 2023 as a redshirt freshman, second team All-Ivy last year. And he's just been dominant for 3 straight years. This year, he's got 58 catches for 859 yards and 9 touchdowns through 8 games. As a freshman, a redshirt freshman, he had 67 catches for 788 yards and 8 touchdowns in 23. Last year, he had 46 catches for 684 yards and 7 touchdowns in 24. PFF grade of 83.4, which is 28th amongst receivers, and a receiving grade of 88.1. Talk about what Jared Richardson brings to the table.
Well, like I said, he's kind of like plays halfway between an Ian Strong type and a Brandon Coleman type. One of the things that's interesting, despite his size, is he can kind of almost like a basketball type play, keep a defender even close to him, and then just at the last moment he can kind of reach out or like almost shield, kind of like Ian Strong does with the ball. I think he has a good catch radius, and a lot of times like right there on that clip, they will just stack everybody in the middle. Or on this clip, right, he just extends and makes a nice hands catch. sometimes bigger guys are going to just catch it in here. And then on this play, you see that everybody is in the box basically, and they're basically saying, we dare you to try to defend this guy with one defender. Because we know that we can throw that slant almost every time, and he's going to shield the ball effectively, which is a lot like similar plays to Ian Strong. You see a lot of the same type of plays that he would run. Here's kind of a Brandon Coleman one where he kind of runs on a shallow cross and then turns the corner. So he does have that type of speed. I would not be sure if he has more straight line speed than Ian Strong, but at times like he'll catch a short screen like that one right there, more of like Leonte Carew would do, and then Rutgers doesn't really use Strong in a lot of those type of routes. Whereas this one they would, right? Run, turn around, catch the ball, and then beat the first guy and try to get some yards. That's why I try to say that I think his catch radius is good. He's got good agility. I think he's got a little bit more bounce in his step than Strong. I'm not sure if he's as physically powerful, but there's a lot of overlap there. And pretty much, maybe not Ohio State, but I feel like most Power 4 teams, if this guy showed up in your locker room, he would probably be starting because he runs a lot of extensive route tree, has good hands, and the only thing that I would have knocked on him in 23 was there were times he didn't fight for the ball. Like sometimes smaller guys would be able to knock passes away that I thought he should just snatch, and that's been less of an issue. And even this past week, they're playing Harvard, who's the best team in the Ivy League, and he did everything he could. He got 3 touchdowns, and they still lost.
Yeah, and those stats aren't in the write-up because I wrote these up last week. So there's an additional 3 touchdowns that need to be accumulated on this. So I think he's got, 12 touchdowns now for the season?
I think so.
But we talked about the Dartmouth corner. That was the only game that he didn't really dominate in. So it's a good sign because, as you can see on tape, he basically gets whatever he wants in the Ivy League.
Right.
Anything else on Richardson before we move on to our next player?
No. I mean, I think that, like I said, he's a good player, and I just think the demand for him is going to be really, really high. And there's a downside shot. He wouldn't even try to go Power 4. He might just, if his measurables are good enough, he might just be able to try to go to the NFL. My guess would be he wouldn't because I'm not sure what his 40 time would be. Yeah. So that's probably the most likely reason he would stay at the college level rather than roll the dice for the NFL. Because let's say he runs like a 4.67, like you're not going to get drafted very high unless you're Anquan Bolden with that.
Yeah. And one other thing I'll add is Jared Richardson. I don't know if it's because of the competition or whether it's because he's got like freakishly long arms, but he looks taller than 6'2" on tape.
Yes. I think part of it's the arm length.
Yeah.
And it's also because the Ivy League DBs are not big.
Yeah. But it wouldn't surprise me if he's got like a 90th percentile NFL prospect in terms of wingspan based on what he looks like just running around out there.
Yeah.
Next up, we got Josh Derry. He's a redshirt junior out of Monmouth. He's listed at 5'9", 175 pounds. He'd have a year of eligibility left after this season. He's from Towson, Maryland. Went to Concordia Prep. Monmouth is just pumping out receivers, man. He's had an exceptional 2 straight seasons for Monmouth. He's got 64 catches for 948 yards and 10 touchdowns through 10 games in 25. After recording 60 catches for 917 yards and 5 touchdowns in 24 when he was PFF's number 12th ranked wide receiver with an 88.2 grade. He's had 2 games against FBS competition in his career. Both of them he recorded over 100 yards. So this past season he had 7 catches for 110 yards and 2 touchdowns at Charlotte. And last year when Monmouth went on the road to beat FIU, he had 7 catches for 108 yards. This season, he's got a 90.2 PFF grade, which is 4th amongst all receivers nationally, and a receiving grade of 90.5. Rutgers has shown the propensity to dip into Monmouth for receivers. Could they do it again? I don't know. David, what are your thoughts on Josh Derry?
I mean, I don't think he's as good as Damir Miller, but show the clip. So you see how quick his feet are, right?
Yep.
It's more like what we saw of Jaquay Jackson at a lower level, where he just sets his feet, moves his feet. He can execute any of the sort of moves that a receiver needs to do, right? Like he can kind of do a quick power step and plant or kind of fake it. So I think that just agility and speed is one of the things that we like. I think his catch radius is actually a little bigger than DT's. I don't obviously think he has the power in the lower half, and I'm not sure if his like straight line 40 time would be as good as DT Sheffield, but there's a shot that you could get basically a similar level of productivity in a slightly different body, right? You see, look at him in that picture, right? He doesn't have the thickness in the lower half that DT Sheffield has.
No.
DT is just got those really, really thick legs that you really guys would struggle to tackle him in his thighs, right? But Derry is very quick, and it's really hard for guys to get on him because, like I said, his feet are so shifty. You know, I think that there's a place for him, and assuming he goes to the Power Four, he'll be in somebody's too deep. It just the athleticism just seems hard to ignore. Now, is he an every down guy? I don't know. I mean, he's just kind of small, but you know, with those quick feet, if you have a scheme and quarterback who knows what they're doing, he could be a really effective player.
And you'll notice just from watching these clips how often they use him in motion. It's crazy how effective a guy can be when they're allowed to kind of get a full running start. And this is maybe the most impressive clip because he was able to absorb the contact there, not only hold on to the ball, but also continue moving forward to get the score there.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's strong for his size. It's just he doesn't have the mass, is what I'm saying, comparative to some of the other slot guys we've seen.
Yeah, like DT is not even fair to compare like anybody to because DT is probably like a 5% body fat type guy. He's just like genetically a freak as well as a hard worker.
But again, right there, you saw how he reached out and caught that pass. DT doesn't make that many plays with his hands extended. He really catches it more inside of the triangle.
Yep. Anything else on Josh Derry before we move on to the next player?
I mean, I haven't seen every one of his games, right? So we don't know what his drop rate is. You know, that's one of the hard things to tell because, you know, whether it be Jaquay or DT, you know, we just see the production. We're like, whoa, but then their hands aren't necessarily as good as we thought, even though they have some highlight reel plays like that. I mean, maybe his hands are amazing. I'm not sure. I haven't watched every down of every game to know that.
Yeah, let me pull that up. That's something that PFF tracks.
Okay, yes, they track it, but I would take that with a grain of salt.
That's fair. Let's move on to the next player. It's Reed Swanson, who is a redshirt sophomore out of Colgate. He's listed at 6'6", 215 pounds. He'd have 2 years of eligibility left after the season. He's from Glen Gardner, Pennsylvania, but he attended Wyoming Seminary, which is in Pennsylvania. He's 6'6", and he's got 48 catches this season for 778 yards and 7 touchdowns through 10 games after posting a 20-catch, 223-yard, 4-touchdown season as a redshirt freshman. He had 1 game against FBS competition this year and was a Power 4 team. He played at Syracuse, and he had 7 catches for 110 yards and 2 touchdowns. PFF grade of 86.8, which is 15th amongst all receivers. An excellent receiving grade of 88.3. David, what do you think about this Reed Swanson guy?
I first, can't get over that it's Glen Gardner, New Jersey. Obviously, famous Rutgers baseball player Glen Gardner, Hall of Famer. There. Now, the one thing that's interesting about Swanson is I think he's number 0, right? They have another receiver, Fogler, who's number 88, and they both make a lot of plays. So it's hard for me to tell if defenses are more concerned about 0 or there he is, 88. Like, I don't know for sure, like, who they're more concerned to cover. He also he moves better than someone of his listed height, which is what kind of intrigues me because
he's on the outside
he's just
here.
A good player. You can see here, though, look at that defensive back, how much he's hunched over. So when the defensive back isn't like dropping his hips, he just runs right by him, right? Nice one-handed catch there. But I mean I don't think you're going to see defensive back play like that, where a DB is kind of just like hunched over and doesn't even get a hand on him at the Big Ten level. But again, he's a reliable player. I like him, and I'm not saying everyone in the Rutgers receiver room would have the productivity that he has at a lower level, but I would just venture to I'm not sure that he's better than a Michael Thomas or a Jordan Houston or a Verdon Allen, but the production is there. It's hard to argue with that.
Yeah, he'd be maybe if we were losing KJ Duff after this in this current cycle, maybe he'd be like a good body type replacement, but he's not the level of athlete that KJ Duff is by any means.
Right, and I don't think he can just go up and get the ball and just snatch it like KJ can do. Right, even Brandon Coleman was 6'6", but he didn't have that many plays unless you're Arkansas and you just got abused by him, where he would jump over and catch guys, like Randy Moss style. KJ Duff has that ability, and Swanson's tall, but he plays more of a traditional style of a receiver, in my opinion, from the clips that I've seen.
That's fair. I would agree with that.
But again, the production's there, and as a receiver, that's the most important thing.
Yeah, because if you're not getting the ball thrown your way, that means something either you're not good enough to get on the field, or there's not the trust there that you need to make those plays, which is built in practice. And with the coaches, they typically know who the dudes are and who the dudes aren't on their own team. The last guy we have on the receiver list is Sam Milligan. He's a redshirt junior from Bucknell. He's listed at 6'3", 220 pounds. He have 1 year of eligibility left after the season. He's from Swarthmore, PA. He attended Strathaven High School. He's got 50 catches for 811 yards this season, and 8 touchdowns through 10 games. Last year, he had 19 catches for 281 yards and 5 touchdowns. He's at the Bucknell single game receiving record for touchdowns against VMI this year with 4. And he's got an PFF grade of 83.4, which is 28th amongst receivers, and a receiving grade of 88.1. What have you seen in Sam Milligan?
He pretty much does it all. I think one of those clips you have is the 4 touchdown game against VMI.
Yep.
Where that's Cornell and Bucknell. No, that's not it. He's a very good route runner. Even though he's listed at 6'3", A, I'm not sure if he's that tall, and B, he plays kind of like a Christian Dremel in terms of you'll see a lot of routes that he runs where, he can both have subtle speed moves like that where he didn't really put his foot in the ground. He just kind of was more like a speed route. Or he will have other plays where he'll run a comeback. Like on that one where it's hard to see, but he kind of ran in and then he had a comeback route or a curl back to the pylon. He's got pretty good quickness. My thought would be he'd be best going to a team with a traditional tall pocket passer that would be able to see him, because a lot of those shifty little moves they're not as effective if your quarterback can't adjust the timing on the route. So I think, he's a good player, but I just don't know if he has the athleticism that you're going to say, we want to play this guy over Michael Thomas or Ice Cup or some of the other guys that they have. Unless Christian Dremel kind of was an anomaly because they really didn't have depth at his position. Yep. And he had shown such reliable hands and quickness. That's how he got on the field. But even last year, Rutgers didn't play him earlier in the year because they felt like, hey, we got all these other dudes. And so I think that the right move for him personally would be to go to a team that doesn't have a lot of depth at the receiver room, or like we saw from Rutgers, a couple years ago, they're just trying to need a bridge receiver for a year. And I think he'll be pretty good because he's got reliable hands, but you don't see him running away from people. And he's, again, if he's 6'3", I'd be kind of surprised because you see how he's quick. Again, great route runner, runs the whole route tree, but I struggle to see a scenario where he's helping you beat a really good team. Yeah, if you think you need him to help you beat a group of 5 team, like we probably have other issues. But again, I like him as a player. And, one of the things that we probably should say more often is like, hey, I would love to play offensive tackle in the NFL or at a Power 5, but I'm not physically like gifted. It's not like something that's my fault, just like it's
Yep.
not something that his fault. Like I'm not trying to be rude about it, but I just feel like Rutgers has superior athletes who they're going to try to play next year that have higher upside. But if he ended up on the team, sure, there's a scenario where he puts up 2023 Christian Dremel numbers because he's just reliable and defenses are accounting for the other guys.
Yeah, no, that's a great call. I in watching it on replay, he definitely doesn't. When he's leaping, he doesn't look like he gets. He doesn't look like he's a great. He doesn't have great burst, and he's like you said, he's not getting away from guys downfield. So it's definitely you have to play him in a specific manner in order for him to succeed at the Power 4 level.
Right.
Which
But
I
he has
definitely think
really
he'll be
good
able.
hands, man. Like you see how
Mm-hmm.
he catches every pass out here, out like he's very, very reliable with his catching. Right, he's a
Times
smooth
his
catcher.
jumps
He's
really
never
well.
juggling the ball. He doesn't take time. It's just like whoop and then go.
Yeah, there's something to be said for guys who know the exact efficiency of movement that they need in order to make a play. Whereas some guys are raw athletes, but they're jumping a half a second before they should be, and they're having to like catch this basket catch on the way down from a jump, or the guys who really truly know like the exact moment that they need to do everything, whether it be the late
Right,
hands, whether it be high pointing the ball exactly where they need to. There's something to be said
right.
for that.
Yeah, I mean, look no further than unfortunately Adonai Mitchell for the Jets the other
Yes,
day, who
great
had
call out.
3 solid drops that were just like, dude, this guy wouldn't make those drops. He would
No.
secure those catches.
Yeah, it's unbelievable the talent, the physical talent and physical abilities some guys have that just are not able to make it work on the field. It's like having the fastest car in a race, but your driver like isn't comfortable making tight turns or something like that.
Right, right, right.
Um, so going through the offensive list, overall, where do you see the needs for Rutgers, and how many guys do you think if you were running the program, you'd actually kind of try and go for? Not necessarily guys on the list, but like how many roles would you try and be filling from the portal on offense this year?
I'd kind of do like you said with the CJ Campbell thing, both at running back and maybe to an extent receiver, where only I'd be very targeted in the guys that I want and really try to sell them on like we want you, not like you plural. We want you
Sure.
individually. That would probably be how I would handle it. But we saw with the tackle depth this year that man, like you can never have enough at that spot. And so I mean, at tackle, I could see, like we saw last year, they brought in 5 offensive linemen. Sometimes you get lucky, and it's a Hank Zielinskis with a personal connection. But otherwise, like offensive linemen, there's enough spots too that let's say you bring in 2 guys on the outside. If you're in the program and you're one of the 5, and you're still one of the 5 best, you're going to play. Like there's so
Yep.
many spots available at that position, in that on the line, I should say, that you shouldn't really be scared that like, oh, they're bringing one guy. I got to get out of here for playing time. Right? That's
Yep.
probably not the situation they're in. But again, a lot next year depends on health. Right? Do they
Sure.
have? Is Taj White back? Does he have to play tackle, or can you play him at guard? Obviously, he played pretty well last game, but in a perfect world, Mo Giwa develops, and maybe one of the freshmen, and you can shift some of those more experienced guys to the inside, and but that's not usually how it works on the offensive line. I think you got to just find as many guys as you can that maybe can play tackle, and then maybe a Ryder Langsdale hits, or if you get 3 Ryder Langsdale, one of them does, and you get one of your tackles for the year. I mean, I think that's kind of the mindset that they have and the mindset that they should have.
Yeah, the depth in the program at premium positions, outside of defensive line, I would say is in a great place overall. In terms of receiver, in terms of offensive line, I think they have a lot of guys that they feel good about long term that are young. We'll see if they end up developing. As we've seen, injuries happen. guys end up washing out. But I think the guys that they have in the program, I think they feel good about. But are they going to be ready to take a step up next year? That's kind of on the staff to determine. And I think ultimately will guide who they end up deciding to go after in the portal if they decide to go after players.
Yeah, the only other position that might lack depth that we don't know is quarterback, but we already talked about why that's a challenge. The only other thing that we didn't mention that I thought might be a possibility would be there's always a chance that you can find a guy who wants to be a quarterback, but maybe he should be playing another position. And, obviously you're not going to recruit Gavin Wimsatt back, right? But in a hypothetical world, a player like that, an athletic quarterback at a lower level, you bring him in, you see if they can play, and in an emergency situation like you talk about that like Syracuse is in and Wisconsin, or actually that Syracuse was in 2 years ago too when they were playing that tight end at quarterback in their bowl game and they got spanked like 45-0, which basically led to Fran Brown's hiring, right? Like I could maybe, the whole old joke, like he was a high school quarterback type thing. Well, maybe he was a lower level college quarterback that, in an emergency situation, you kind of have a package for it. Now maybe maybe you just use Michael Thomas in that role or something. Like maybe that guy's already on the roster, like when they had Mohamed Sanu, right?
Yeah.
But I could see a scenario where if you find a guy like that, you might be like, well, he's not like a top of our wide receiver list, but if he had to play, maybe, like they had Rashad Rochelle, who was a high school quarterback, and I kind of feel like maybe it would be nice to have that or a Johnny Langan. Like maybe you can find, or actually, who they would have been this year? Oliver Belote, the defensive tackle.
Belote.
His high school film as a quarterback was like ridiculous. I don't know if you ever watched it.
I haven't. No, I haven't seen it.
I mean, he's huge now, but that would have been funny if he was taking snaps and running like a wild night.
Yeah, it's easy to forget how many guys, because they were just like the best athlete on the team, played quarterback for their high school squad. Tyrone Powell, yeah, like
yeah.
I would say at least half of the Power 4 football players played quarterback in high school due to that.
Well, I guess the only other one would be like, wasn't DJ McClary a quarterback?
Yes, yeah, he was like a rushing quarterback.
So like maybe he's that guy for you, but not if he's a starting linebacker. But I'm just saying, sometimes you might just be like, we got 105 guys, maybe we can't get a traditional quarterback, but a guy maybe he's a little bit better thrower of the football than like Rashad Rochelle, or who was that other guy they got? I don't know if it was Josh Youngblood. But there's someone like that they got who wanted to be a quarterback a couple of years ago, and they were like,
Yeah,
I don't think it was Youngblood, but it was like someone around that time.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's always a chance like something like that happens. But, yeah, I agree. Best case scenario, you can get sort of like that mentor quarterback who's already kind of transitioning into a GA role. Because, again, I hope Shaw Nationvelder is good. I mean, I saw a lot of development from him from a junior to a senior in high school, but nothing sinks your season like a quarterback injury, like you mentioned.
Oh, yeah. Well, David, you've been great with your time. Really appreciate you coming on for these special editions of the pod. I know we're planning to do some stuff in the off season with Larry K that I'm really excited about too, but I won't ruin that surprise. But any closing thoughts here before we head out?
Just we appreciate constructive criticism. So if that's what you guys want, you want more technical terminology and things like that, like we'll try to do that.
Yep. All right. Well, this is going to close out our potential portal watch series. This will now move on to who they're actually looking into. That has already started. There's a bunch of guys who have entered the portal. I know the portal technically doesn't open for the FBS until January. And you can't even enter the portal as a player whose coach is left until the new coach is hired now, which I think is absurd. But it's gross. D3 players have no windows, so they can enter anytime. D2 is the same way. I want to say FCS has a different window than the FBS. The FBS is the only one that opens at the beginning of January. So there will be guys who we'll start visiting schools. It's already happening, so stay tuned for that. But for me and David, this has been another edition of the Knight Report podcast, signing off.